And speaking of impact, I want to move us along into our achievements and give our implementing partners a chance to showcase some of the great things that they have done over the last 5 years, and to share with you some of the things that we would like to carry forward. And to kick us off, I want to start by calling on Faith Horner from C4ADS to share with us some of the great stuff that C4ADS has done over the course of the Routes Partnership. Faith, over to you.
Thank you, Richard, and what excellent introduction by everyone. I'm honored to be following that up. Can we go to the next slide, please? So just to give a quick overview, as Richard mentioned, my name is Faith Horner. I'm the Program Director of the Environmental Crimes Team here at C4ADS, which has been with the Routes Partnership gratefully since the beginning. A couple of things I just wanted to go over is that C4ADS, we're a nonprofit, and we are driven by these 3 objectives or 3 concepts that appear on your screen about, most specifically for the Routes Partnership, closing vector vulnerabilities. So identifying where in the legal systems of transportation and finance, illicit actors are exploiting to traffic wildlife, and closing those gaps, as well as shaping the ecosystem of the counter wildlife trafficking space, where by providing guidance, tools, and recommendations, we are aiming to increase cohesion of actions. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So with that in mind, C4ADS participated under Objective 1 that Crawford mentioned, which was focused around improving the data and analytics of wildlife trafficking within passenger and cargo supply chains. Through that objective, we first started out by creating and maintaining the C4ADS Air Seizure Database, which contains over 2,300 seizures of all wildlife species in the air transit sector globally, which is the first air transit sector focused seizure database that uses publicly available information of its kind. Once that was established, we participated in the creation of 3 initial longer form reports on the global state of the wildlife trade in the air transit sector, and used those to create a data-backed understanding and evidence of how the air transit sector is being used and exploited by illicit wildlife trafficking activity. Once those longer reports were established, in conjunction with the partners, we identified 3 narrower topics to produce an additional 3 shorter form reports in the last year or so. One on zoonotic disease, one on the convergence of illicit wildlife trafficking with other types of illicit trafficking in the air transit sector, and then most recently a report that narrowed focus on wildlife trafficking in the Latin America and Caribbean air transit sector. Further, we developed the online routes dashboard, which hosts the seizure data, and created 10 one-pagers on specific country analysis to get the data that we've been collecting as part of the partnership directly into the hands of a variety of global stakeholders. And then through these projects, which will be detailed in later today by my colleague Ben Spivak, we worked with the implementing partners to develop over 80 recommendations for action within the air transit sector, including to government authorities, enforcement authorities, and other civil society actors. So really excited to be here today and to see everyone, and I'll hand it back over to you, Richard.
Great, thank you so much, Faith. That was fantastic. Next up, we have Efsoon from WWF. Efsoon, your turn.
Hello, everyone. I'm Efsoon, a director on the private sector engagement team of WWF US. And for the last 5 years, I've been leading with my colleague Corey McFarland on the corporate outreach for the Routes collaboration. Some of you may know that WWF has a long history of working with industry to address some of the world's toughest environmental challenges. Well, tackling wildlife crime is one of those priorities, not in addition to the iconic species that are in jeopardy. It destroys the natural resources in which national economies and livelihoods depend, therefore undermining sustainable development efforts. When asked to be part of Routes early on, I hadn't had much experience working with the aviation or transport sector to date, but because of its vast size and reach, I saw the opportunity to engage on this important issue and really make a difference. I had also seen how the industry had united and rallied around human trafficking, and I saw the parallels and looked forward to the possibilities for lasting impact. Fast forward several years, I'm happy to report now on some highlights. This last year, we've seen a culmination of much of our work with partners, starting first with the Routes Partner Spotlight video series. This was launched in June this year, just in time for World Environment Day. Its purpose was to highlight company achievements in addressing wildlife trafficking and to urge others in the industry to join the fight. It was kicked off with a compilation video, which I believe we'll be showing very shortly, featuring multiple industry partners who were sharing their stories and demonstrating their actions and how it was possible in their own companies. This was followed by weekly videos highlighting individual partners. As you've heard also, we're calling these partners champions because they are champions and ambassadors. And so far, this group for the videos includes Royal Schiphol Group, Kenya Airport Authority and Kenya Airways, Malaysia Airlines, and Etihad Airways as well. For a lasting effect, these videos are all available on the Routes YouTube channel and can be used across the value chain for the sector to inspire and demonstrate how one can engage within one's own company. Thankful for all the champions who were able to share their stories so far and look forward to growing that list in the future. Moving on to another highlight, our Latin American Caribbean Regional Engagement, LAC-LAC. This was a new strategy approach for us at the beginning of our final year. It began with a virtual regional stakeholder meeting that included airlines, airports, law enforcement agencies, environmental government agencies, NGOs, and from the region. That first meeting was very successful in achieving its main objective to make connections within the region who could then in the future work together to collaborating on future wildlife trafficking prevention efforts. As follow-up, we've recently completed individual country-specific virtual workshops for Mexico, Colombia, and Ecuador, passing on the baton and supporting the process where these country networks can continue their work, putting their plans into action after the formal Routes collaboration is over. These are just some of our great collaboration partnership stories. Prior to these strategic efforts in the LAC region, we had much support from regional partners and associations in Africa and Asia who gave us platforms to tell this story and offer opportunities for how industry could get involved and take action. We're very grateful for all those collaborations, and none of this would be possible without it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Efsun. Next up, we have Juliana Scavuzzi, the Senior Director of Sustainability, Environmental Protection, and Legal Affairs for ACI World. Juliana, over to you.
Thank you very much, Richard, and good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Yes, I come from Airports Council International, ACI, which is the trade association of airports, and we do represent more than 700 members, which operate almost 2,000 airports in 183 countries. So we represent those airports and we promote their collective interests, fostering cooperation with partners throughout the air transport industry and beyond. As ACI, we aim to advance facilitation, security, environmental sustainability, among other initiatives that will be beneficial for airports. To achieve such aims, ACI has been engaging with various stakeholders and been involved in different partnerships. Among those, This one routes it's quite a special one, and it's where ACI has been a member since the end of 2016 and later on as a core member. ACI joined the partnership recognizing the importance to prevent wildlife trafficking by the air transport sector. We also acknowledge that the adverse effects of this illegal crime goes beyond the serious environmental damage to the world's biodiversity. And this crime, as we know, is transnational in nature, so it does require the global action to tackle it, and airports being this also interface of different modes of transportation and their staff, they can contribute to address the problem. ACI has committed in a General Assembly resolution in 2017 to promote cooperation among aviation, transportation, and government stakeholders to raise awareness of wildlife trafficking, also to facilitate the implementation of training and best practices among member airports. The partnership was really the game changer for ACI, enabling not only the fundamental financing resources, but also the expertise from the different partners that you have started to hear today. The invaluable support, of course, from our members. In this way, it has created a solid collaboration among our partners, working to protect not only the world's biodiversity, but also we have learned very recently that we can contribute and should to avert future pandemics. We have worked and developed a range of resources, especially created for airports to help prevent wildlife trafficking. In this slide, you can see some of them developed to raise awareness and provide guidance to airports worldwide. This includes guidance documents such as the Wildlife Trafficking Handbook, training materials such as our Combating Wildlife Trafficking e-model, webinars, and others. We'll talk about some of these resources later on in the meeting. We have significantly raised awareness of airports around the world about wildlife trafficking issues through the Routes Partnership. One example is the creation of the ACI Wildlife Trafficking Prevention Task Force, which was established to discuss matters related to wildlife trafficking and holds regular meeting calls with key speakers. This has helped airports' efforts in fighting wildlife trafficking, and we hope to continue doing that after the partnership is completed. ACI has also signed the United for Wildlife's Buckingham Palace Declaration in 2016. And aside from being a member of the Transport Task Force, we have provided support by encouraging airports all over the world to sign the declaration and to show their commitment to fight wildlife trafficking. Our most recent member who signed the declaration is Fraport, Greece, who represented the 14 Greek regional airports in that commitment. And of course, you hear from other members during the meeting today. I would also like to mention, last but not least, our advocacy efforts with the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. Together with IATA, we have jointly proposed the inclusion of recommended practice for states to ensure the procedures are in place to combat wildlife trafficking in Annex 9 of the Chicago Convention. So this proposal has been unanimously endorsed by the ICAO Facilitation Panel, and the Air Transport Committee has also approved it, the amendment very recently on 1st of October. So this will now be circulated for comments for contracting states and international organizations, and will finally go to the ICAO Council for final approval. So I'll keep it there, and I'm looking forward to continue discussing the next steps and collaboration with our partners. Thank you very much, Richard. Over to you.
Thank you, Juliana. So impressive and such a great and far-reaching impact. So thank you for that. Next, we have John Gottson. John, you lead IATA's environment programs and have spearheaded the aviation industry's environmental sustainability programs and its involvement in the Routes Partnership. Oh, I'm sorry. No, we do not have John next. We have Claire. So sorry, Claire Beestall, who has been leading training and capacity building for traffic and really helping to bring frontline airline personnel into focus here for us. So Claire, over to you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Next slide, please. One thing I wanted to do, we've already heard from Crawford, who was talking about many of the people in traffic who have been working very, very hard on the Routes Partnership over the years. But I just wanted to mention that this section it will highlight the work of traffic in Southeast Asia. So the team of three that we have Renee, Maymay, and myself, and we have all been working from the headquarters of Traffic in Southeast Asia in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Next slide, please. So the aim of the work that we've been doing is to improve the ability of transportation personnel to assist law enforcement to combat wildlife trafficking. And you can see from the first bullet point there, this has involved starting off with development of training materials. One of the things that we've been really keen to get across is that we have not been providing training to turn anybody into a customs or a police officer if they aren't already one of those, but we've been providing training so that the private sector can provide so many more pairs of eyes and ears to actually assist law enforcement in combating wildlife trafficking through the aviation sector. The training materials that we have developed are very varied. You'll be hearing more about those later on. And we developed those, we designed those with advice and in collaboration with the aviation industry, because the most important thing about these is that what we develop is actually used, and it fits in well with the efforts that companies are able to do themselves to combat wildlife trafficking through aviation. We have conducted an awful lot of trainings. We have met some fabulous people in some amazing places. This is a list of some of the places, or in fact, I think all of the places that we have been over the past few years. You'll see that some of these have a highlight around them, and those mark the locations and the companies that we have provided training for since everybody stopped flying after the start of this dreadful pandemic that we've all been living under for the last year and a half. Many of the discussions that we've had with these groups have involved encouraging and assisting them to integrate the routes training materials into their own company training. We know that a number of companies have done this. If you have already done this and you're not on our list here, please let us know. So we have seen a number of companies and associations. We've got AAPA up there, which is the Association of Asia Pacific Airlines, who have provided training for their members, and companies who have integrated or designed their own training based on that which we have developed for routes. And next slide, please. This is engagement that we've been conducting with groups and associations. Most recently, we're looking at the Illegal Wildlife Trade Working Group in Brazil. We've been collaborating with the Airline Association of Southern Africa, ACI's Asia Pacific Environmental Working Group, United for Wildlife Australasia chapter, and as I just mentioned, the Association of Asia Pacific Airlines. It's been a fabulous experience. We have met some wonderful people, and I'm really looking forward to see how best the work that we have started through Routes can continue with the efforts of the private sector and others in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire. And now it is, in fact, time to hear from John Godson, the leader on fighting illegal wildlife trafficking in the air transportation sector. John, over to you.
Thank you, Crawford. That's Crawford. Oh my God, Richard. God, okay, thank you. Yeah. So, as the trade association for 290 airlines, IATA has had a long history of setting the welfare standards for the carriage of live animals in air transport. The first edition of the live animal regulations goes back as far as 1969. However, it wasn't until we had a meeting of 20 airline environmental managers in the Kruger National Park back in October 2014 for the issue of wildlife trafficking to emerge as a key environmental challenge for airlines. This followed the screening of a shocking video of a wounded rhino that had had its horn removed by a chainsaw. It was still alive. This galvanized support. In June 2015, 4 important events coincided. The Secretary General of CITES addressed IATA's annual general meeting. The Routes co-design workshop was held in DC. IATA's Director General joined the United for Wildlife Transport Task Force, and a dentist shot a lion called Cecil with a crossbow. Although many airlines had bans of legally traded species that included shark fin and primates, the public outcry was enormous, with up to 400,000 people signing a petition online. This resulted in the introduction of voluntary bans on hunting trophies. We knew that we needed to act and that our focus should not be on the race to the moral high ground through the banning of legal traded items, but to focus on supporting enforcement with combating the challenge of the illegal trade. So with some degree of nervousness and suspicion, we joined the Routes Partnership responsible for leading Objective 4 on industry standards and protocols. And you can see some of our results in the numbers on our slide. For the first few years of the partnership, we were the only representatives of the air transport sector and felt a great sense of responsibility to try and ensure that Routes outputs had a reality check. Some of the highlights over the last 6 years, well, we've got 67 airlines representing over a third of global traffic have signed the Buckingham Palace Declaration. We've led or participated in 676 IWT meetings. We've introduced 8 new IATA protocols, recommended practices and guidance, and 5 airlines have been certified according to our IWT module. Most importantly, we're working with our partners on an auto detection project in South Africa, which is based on the same technology we use in aviation security to identify explosives. This could be a game changer against the fight against wildlife trafficking. Over the years, our airlines have moved beyond the initial and somewhat natural skepticism about working with environmental NGOs to positively support the partnership and embrace its achievements. Our commitment to work on wildlife trafficking does not end with Routes. IATA and our airlines have made public commitments to continue to support enforcement in fighting wildlife crime. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you again, Faith, Afsoon, Claire, and Juliana for such a great roundup of our impact. We're gonna, one of the resources that Afsoon mentioned is this partner spotlight video. We're gonna share that as we go to break in a moment, but right now we're not gonna play it at this time. We're